again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Can't Wait. Sounds terrible. We're not a game show, but maybe we should be. We love Chicago media and Chicago and Illinois politics, and we try to bring clarity to our viewers, our scores of viewers. That's why we are sponsored by Clear as Mud. You think Grant Park after Lala is muddy? You should see our Chicago crystal ball. So we use Clear as Mud. Better than Windex, and it is from the earth. That's Natalie, who just popped into our vodcast. It's a little phrase I heard the other day. Producer Grace is pulling the strings of our trademarked YouTube vodcast. That's Rachel. That's Patrick. And, Rachel, what do you think of the vodcast? Should we go with that? I mean, we're already trademarked.
I've heard it. I'm gonna have to think about it. I'm not sure.
You need to get hip. So an announcement that's as surprising as when I told Patrick, hey, the lake is on the east in Chicago. Secretary of State of Illinois, Alexei Janulius, declared he is indeed running for mayor. Number of the Chicago media outlets covered this, of course. Chicago Tribune reporting Illinois Secretary of State Alexei Janulius announced Sunday he will run for mayor, ending over a year of speculation and making official his front-runner status in the already crowded field. Rich Miller at Capital Facts pointed out that it was a kind of old school launch, Natalie, at the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers 134 headquarters in Bronzeville. And he had a number of members of the city council with him. The Tribune went on to say, the flashy made-for-TV rollout sought to emphasize themes of Chicago patriotism, which I had never heard of, just like Rachel never heard of vodcast, as well as Alexei's ties to small businesses across town and to former President Barack Obama. Did you know he played basketball with Barack Obama a lot?
Drink.
It's a little... So he's in, Natalie.
I'm shocked.
With his shirt on, too.
For now. I just wonder if
now.
he'll have enough time to hit the gym while he's on the campaign trail.
I'm guessing that he will. The Sun-Times noted that he covered a couple of topics. One quote that I found a little bit amusing. He complimented President Obama, quote, this is Alexei Janulius, what he did outstandingly well, and the lesson he taught me at every step for every office he ran. He said, make sure you surround yourself with people who are way smarter than you at every stop of the way.
No comments.
We'll just let that sit there. Rachel, it's not an easy gig, whoever of the 30 to 40 people that are running for mayor. Right now, Chicago is facing a $90 million mid-year shortfall, a $1 billion plus budget gap in 2027, and a $36 billion pension crisis, with, as the Tribune called it, or sometimes called it, 2 of the 4 city employee pension funds hovering dangerously close to bankruptcy. Some might say they're there already, but we'll give them a little space there. Meanwhile, Mayor Johnson, Patrick, has $631,000 in his campaign fund compared to nearly $22 million for Secretary of State Janulius. And he's already trying to turn this into a battle of the super rich versus the people. He is not impressed by Alexei's entry into the race. What was your take from your far off location in DuPage County?
Well, I just like the efficiency here that we're witnessing. Double campaigning. Why spend all that time and money once just to have to do it all over again shortly thereafter? So I'm not sure how it works. Like, as you're driving, does one campaign pay for half of the mileage reimbursement and the other campaign pay for the other reimbursement? Who's donating to what cause? I mean, there's so many things there. But I thought in the rollout video, two things that had almost occurred last week at the same exact moment. Speaker Welch going to the CTU, maybe a little bit hat in hand and giving them some things. And then Marianne Ahern getting right to candidate Janulius and saying, what are you going to do with the CTU? And to me, the answer, non-answer kind of spoke to that 900-pound gorilla in this race, and will be the dynamic at play, regardless how much money Secretary of State Janulius is squirreled away.
So Rachel, Patrick just jammed 4 other topics into his hot take there. So that concludes our podcast for today. We'll see you next week. But anyway, it's the race is on. It's going to be a battle of money versus all of these insurgents. Give us your sage take.
I mean, almost $22 million in the bank isn't nothing. Huge amount of union support he walked out. That's not nothing. I can certainly see why a lot of media outlets are calling him a front runner at this point. I mean, I don't think any of us has seen, actual polling to that effect, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's what it said. But that said, there's a lot of time between now and the runoff, and there are a lot of things that are going to happen, right? We're going to have a whole general election. I think could factor into how voters are feeling by next spring, whether or not Democrats take the U.S. Senate, right? If they take it and things seem to be stabilized, they might be reaching for a more moderate candidate. If they somehow don't, Republicans are still in charge, they might be angry and they might be voting for more progressive candidates, right? I think there are a lot of dynamics here in Chicago. Patrick kind of alluded to this, you kind of alluded to this. The city finances are in a mess. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, the top 3 budget people have all resigned for Mayor Johnson, right? Another thing that's coming to head, Patrick touched on it, CTU. I mean, just in the last week, Welch said he would find this $150 million for them. They turned around and passed a budget that's $150 million out of balance, and now they're running around talking about maybe school can't start if the General Assembly can't get their stuff together on that. And that's going to be something that will in some way, shape, or form fall on Mayor Johnson's shoulders, right? I mean, the people who voted for that out of balance budget, those are people that he appointed to those positions. So there are a lot of things that are kind of coming down the pike that I think could have a huge impact on this race in the coming months. So I don't know.
It would be a lot easier to ignore all of the financial challenges in the city since the entire financial staff seems to have resigned or walked away from City Hall. One of the things, Natalie, that Mayor Johnson said, that he alleged that Alexei Janulius is being supported by interests who supported President Donald Trump's tax cuts and have no plan to respond to his federal immigration campaign in Chicago. And he says they are beholden to the interests of corporations. Quote, they use these positions to fatten the pockets of the ultra-rich. They're carrying on the same agenda of the Trump administration. So somehow, noted Democrat bundler Michael Sachs is now carrying the agenda of the Trump administration and all of the other business folks that he's recruited to support the Janulius campaign.
Yeah, I mean, it's an obvious tactic. The mayor's poll numbers were never higher than when he was agitating against Donald Trump when you had ICE here and some of the migrant issues. So I think that's going to be a theme that he'll visit often. But saying that about a labor-backed Democratic candidate who plays basketball with Barack Obama is pretty amusing.
Well, and we have to remember that Janulius has waded into the ICE debate too, right? He has taken what is kind of a boring job as Secretary of State, making sure you get your license, and found smart ways, I think, to wade into some of these hot topics. And we know we've seen polling that says candidates are much more likely to vote for someone who's taken that stand against ICE in Chicago. So, yes. I mean, he's put his 2 cents in on that debate as well.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. He's used the platform of the office in very smart ways to make it more relevant than just getting your driver's license. And in fact, he's, running ads right now for the one office that he's running for. And then he's got the second ads that'll come up. So I am really actually surprised that we haven't seen more noise about the fact that he's actively running for two different offices. But I'm sure that's to come.
And I think it,
Well,
it
since
is
we
really smart
go ahead, Becky.
politics to try to negate the folks that aren't going to have the 22 million. You just, even though the main sources of the money are not the billionaire Trump donors, you say it enough times, you convince people enough, and it kind of negates the slickness and the ubiquity which he'll be on the air. If you can convince enough rank and file voters that he's paid for by MAGA, right? Like, and because you don't have the money to contest it, it's smart politics. So I think you'll probably see a lot of candidates support that suggestion, and the golden goose could become a little bit of an albatross, done right, because people are just openly skeptical right now of anyone with connections to the quote establishment.
Yep.
Well, also since we last gathered, City Hall and Springfield lobbyist John Kelly entered the race. He did a pretty professional rollout, but he picked a lane that I think will be his own, which is he's actually a little closer to the Trumpy lane than Michael Sachs, for sure, but running as someone who's going to stay out of Washington politics. Stunning, the cast of Sounds Terrible.
I mean, I think to your point, there are essentially three lanes that candidates are inhabiting right now. You've got the progressive, which is Brandon Johnson, and to this day, he's the only proud progressive in the race. You've got the I'm not Brandon Johnson. I'm a more moderate. I'm a more pragmatic. I'm a more, a Democrat that's a little closer to what people want to see, maybe. And then you've got Kelly, who's your third lane. I mean, that's kind of the way the race is shaking out at the moment.
I did see one of our local interviewers trying to drill John Kelly on the concept of being in a position where he won't be able to blast the Trump White House. And he pointed out that with all of the federal money and all the things you need from Washington, why would you go after the White House? And interestingly, it's not the zeitgeist, but during the 150 years that Richard M. Daley was mayor, he very rarely attacked Washington. And he had Democrats in the White House and he had Republicans in the White House. He would go after generic, that's Washington, but he wouldn't say, President Bush or President Clinton is doing something to Chicago. He usually tried to work the inside game. So we'll see if people long for those days of the political combine or whether they want these to pick these more defined lanes. Current congressman and mayoral candidate, another guy running for two offices, Mike Quigley, did a little fundraising stunt calling for the end of wet T-shirts. And where did I do with the quote here? You might imagine that our city treasurer, Maria Pappas, also not impressed with the rollout by the Secretary of State. Quote, if you want to be mayor of the city of Chicago, your IQ has to be higher than your body temperature. I think that's just mean, but she is a soundbite machine.
Mm-hmm.
So that is that. The Chicago Tribune, in their editorial leading up to all of these announcements, has challenged all of the many, many people running for mayor to say that they have some priorities and some benchmarks that explains what you'll do, but how successful will be measured. Something more akin to a business plan than a laundry list of campaign promises. And the Tribune says the tenure of our current mayor, Mayor Johnson, illustrates why Chicago should demand more specifics. And they cited one of Natalie's favorite parts of the Johnson administration. Quote, his allies released "First We Get the Money" just after he took office, and his administration's transition blueprint followed nearly 2 months later. Whatever one thinks of these documents, Chicagoans never had the opportunity to evaluate a detailed governing roadmap. First, we get the money, Natalie.
Made me so happy that they included that. They're doing a great job of getting the money. Bang good job.
They just have no one to count it. No one to count it. All right, let's move to an even more terrible place, an always more terrible place in some regards, Springfield. So, Speaker Welch continues to feel the heat from within his own caucus. And as we noted, there's a burgeoning sexual harassment story going on in the Democrat caucus. A few years ago, complaints about State Representative Benton of Plainfield, a Democrat, were largely ignored, only brought back to life after a lobbyist brought a complaint of her interactions more recently with Representative Benton. I believe, Rachel, it's a little hard to keep track of the fact, and this is, for a good reason, the media is not naming names of the people who are reporting harassing episodes with Benton. So it gets a little confusing, but complainant one and complainant two and lobbyist one. But none of it's good for Benton. But it's also not great for Speaker Welch, who, when he wasn't giving flaming hot emojis to former staffers, was not necessarily moving quickly with the investigation and action on these complaints. This has brought the whistleblower who came out against Speaker Madigan at a time when very few people stepped forward, Elena Hampton, former Democratic Chicago political worker. She noted in a Tribune op-ed, quote, in 2002, a former girlfriend alleged in a police report that Speaker Welch physically assaulted her during an argument. In 2010, a former employee and romantic partner of his filed a lawsuit alleging repeated unwelcome sexual advances and retaliation. In 2011, another employee sued, claiming she faced retaliation after Welch asked for a hug and she declined. The House Democrat caucus ignored all of this and elected Welch Speaker anyway. In doing so, they sent a powerful message to victims and survivors that they still weren't safe. And now we know for a fact that that message was clear. Wow.
To me, it's crazy when you look at Welch and you look at his history before he became Speaker, right? All of that stuff are things that gave people pause. The way he handled this situation becomes all the more baffling given that, right? You would think he would be going out of his way when something like this came to him that was pretty egregious, right? Pretty egregious a couple years ago. And, if he's being accused now of harboring an environment where that's allowed to fester and get worse, maybe those are fair accusations because it looks like he tried to cover something up. And whether he did or didn't, the cover up is usually worse than the bad thing that happened, right? And that's what he's living in now. Any criticism he's getting, I think he's probably earned.
So one of to that point, a lot of the criticism is actually coming now from the Women's Caucus, Natalie. So Capital Facts reported Governor J.B. Pritzker called on the House to, quote, strengthen its harassment prevention and reporting procedures. But Representative Kelly Cassidy of Chicago said the obvious to ABC7 Chicago, quote, there's no training that's going to make somebody not an idiot. Had the speaker intervened meaningfully in 2023, he may have been able to prevent the victimization of two other women.
It's very frustrating to watch this. It's like a bad version of Groundhog's Day. And I think Kelly Cassidy is absolutely right. You can't fix something that's just completely irrevocably broken, and you can't rely on the person to fix it who's part of the problem. So, um, as a fellow woman, it is very frustrating to watch this. As a crisis, strategist, it's equally frustrating because it's like, help me help you. Like, we've seen this movie before. There's a play, like, we know how to fix this. Why haven't we done it? And I think that was part of Elena Hampton's op-ed as well, in terms of, where's the accountability over the last couple of years? There were promises made to reform the system, and to frankly, not to my surprise, nothing was ever done. It was just continuing business as usual. So, very frustrating situation.
Frustration is the bumper sticker for the summer of 26 in Springfield. Even the legislative inspector general, Michael McCuskey, Patrick, is taking some heat, with one of the complainants alleging several factual errors and the fact that he never took notes when he interviewed her. And Capital Facts noted McCuskey's statement in response was defiant and a little off key. Quote, I have been a state and federal judge for 32 years. 8 of those years, I was one of the 94 chief federal judges in the United States. I have never tried cases in the press, nor will I ever do so, ! My judgments have never been attacked by an individual doubting my credibility, ! Being the legislative inspector general is a much different experience than being a federal or state judge. I have nothing more to add. There you have it.
Like, it just gets worse by the minute.
I'm going to take that quote and say, bastardize a little bit of the, saying when the facts are on your side, argue the facts. When the law is on the side, argue the law. When you're a former judge and you think that you're in this process, welcome to the arena, buddy. The facts don't matter. The law doesn't matter. This is trial by public opinion. And thank you for reminding us of your immense and wonderful resume that is inapplicable and inadmissible on a Twitter timeline. So, it's something we deal with all the time with our clients, right? Like we respect the need to preserve arguments in court, but when you're not dealing with a courtroom matter, you're dealing with these other things. It's only going to get worse. So, as we said a couple weeks ago, renew your subscriptions. A lot more stories to come. I think we want to continue to encourage that. And I don't see the drip stopping anytime soon, because this is a autonomous bus with no programming, driving down Wacker Drive, hitting everything it can.
The only reason why it's dripping is because we're in the middle of summer. If this had dropped earlier during the legislative session, and I think the Trib was working on this quite a ways back. And Dennis, I think to your point a couple weeks ago, I think a lot of lawyers have been involved in this process, which slows it down. So you have this coming out in the middle of the summer, and so you've got people who aren't totally dialed in. But it'll be fascinating to see what happens come fall when you've got veto coming up. Who knows if they're going to do this supplemental budget? I mean, that's a whole train wreck unto itself. But the timing is to Speaker Welch's advantage. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, the dog days of August, and he's probably hoping that a lot of people aren't listening. But Rachel, showing that he still has some good political moves. While he's hoping a lot of people aren't listening, he is hoping that Stacey Davis Gates is listening. When you need a friend, I'll be there. So some time ago, when Patrick was trying to rush us to the end of Can't Wait Sounds Terrible.
It was foreshadowing.
He foreshadowed that the speaker has offered to solve the budget crisis at Chicago Public Schools by finding that $150 million and more. And Governor Pritzker says he's waiting to see that plan.
I mean, I think we're all waiting to see that plan, right? I mean, you look at the way CPS has handled finances over the last few years. They took tons and tons of temporary pandemic dollars. They turned it into permanent spending. I mean, spending growth has been huge over the last few years. You've got also legislators he's going to have to convince that have schools that under the funding formula are also deserving of more money, right? So it's like a big complicated thing to try and do that. And also let's remember, okay, they've got a $150 million budget hole. What else is he going to have to promise to get that 150 million? It's not just 150 million, right? Is it 300 million? Is it 500 million to make some promises to get that money through? I don't know. And I don't know where he's going to find it.
Yeah, that 150 million could cost us $1 billion.
I mean,
So
easily.
that leads us to producer Grace. Sounds terrible time. All right, so I wanted to go first because I thought it might cue up some more interesting responses. Although Patrick's probably already on the next video on demand podcast by now. So we have Governor J.B. Pritzker probably running for president, but first he has to be a reelected governor. So I'd like to take a second to analyze his race against downstate former lawmaker and former gubernatorial candidate Darren Bailey. Okay, so that's over. And then let's take a moment to talk about Alexei Janulius's run for mayor, even though he first has to be reelected Secretary of State. As we've reported earlier, he is running against a woman named Diane Harris, who is in a neck-and-neck race with the potted plant behind Patrick. Capital Facts, Rich Miller, in his weekly column of Sun-Times, pointed out recently that Bailey, the Republican candidate for governor, has about $128,000 in the bank. He raised $1.3 million, but spent most of that. Secretary of State candidate Diane Harris, in her race against Patrick's plant and the incumbent Secretary of State, has $1,816.42 in the bank. He then ran through the rest of the Republican ballot, and I won't bore you all or shock you all, but for all the rest of the offices, Attorney General, Treasurer, Comptroller, Secretary of State, less than $100,000 in campaign cash available to that whole slate of people that are running for Republican statewide office. So Rich concludes, quote, "Man, that's just downright pathetic." No, that's more than pathetic. That's terrible. That sounds terrible. The whole thing is terrible. It's a joke. The whole thing is a joke. Back to you.
Hard to argue with that. I don't want to get robbed, but I do keep just cash in the office. Just you never know when you need it. And let's see here. I would appear to have half of the Secretary of State's campaign cash right here.
Plant.
The plant is well funded. I just the Kelsey odds are going to skyrocket when they hear the Green Notebook as is a contender, as they say.
That may make Patrick a mark on the mean streets of Naperville, though.
Thankfully, it's a very safe community, and we have double locks here. But yeah, no, it farcical, confusing, frustrating. Any adjective works, but it really is disappointing and speaks to the rise of extremism on both sides because the primary matters more than the general.
So while you have the floor, Patrick, do you and your potted plant have anything more terrible than that or additionally terrible that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Other than just making myself a mark for petty theft, I will go with that. I do think what sounds terrible is not only are Chicago petitions available, local folks have to go out and circulate their petitions as well. And I thought to myself, wow, that is really early. I'm confused by this. And then I was reminded by reading the Capitol Facts that Governor Pritzker and team accelerated or moved the filing window to better accommodate election challenges so more people can be tossed off of the ballot after finally volunteering to run. So I am so glad that as we bemoan the lack of democracy and people taking interest and special interests, that in fact we've made it easier to accommodate challenging petitions and tossing people off of the ballots, rather than saying perhaps entrenched interests seem to have a leg up in getting people removed from the ballot. So I'm not saying I'm in favor of any of these challenges going on for some of the folks that have struggled to get on the ballot in Chicago of late, but the system, to Dennis's point, ain't on the level.
It's a lawyer's world, Natalie. What's terrible to you?
I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on TV. On that similar note, I was going to go with something else, but I'll stick with the theme. I am a proud resident of the village of River Forest. Not as nice as Naperville, but we don't have a beach, for example. But or a top golf for that matter. But I'm just going to leave that one out there. But so the fine folks, the fine voters of River Forest in the last municipal cycle decided to fairly overwhelmingly pass a term limits measure, primarily because there is a certain segment of residents who are not fans of our longtime village president, friend of CBL, Ms. Kathy Aducci. And so now that matter, it was a referendum, but the fine lawyers who wrote it didn't, I don't know what law school they went to, but there were some questions about legality and how it would be held up in court. And so it's in this weird state of limbo, so that we can't even know if there are or are not term limits. But either way, we're making it much harder for local residents to want to run for office in this tiny little beachless burg, which is just like, if it weren't already hard enough to get people to volunteer and uphold their civic responsibility, we've now made it's just a giant mess. So way to go, residents of River Forest.
Look at all that positivity Dennis has unleashed here in the Sounds Terrible. We're all just, democracy is alive and well.
Well, let's get to the big finish then with Rachel.
Well, I guess I had a different one, but I'm gonna switch too to stay on theme. I in the last week have gotten last 2 weeks, let's say, political texts, polling texts, fundraising texts from, and this is because of my own primary voting history. I think I'm in a coveted demographic of potential swing voters because I've pulled both Republican and Democratic ballots within the last 5 to 10 years. I have gotten them from Mike Quigley, from Mike Lindell, running for governor in Minnesota, did not offer me a discount on pillows, to be clear, but did want fundraising, right? I've gotten them from Darren Bailey. I've gotten them from JB Pritzker. I am just on everyone's list. And as much as I think they are actually a pretty useful tool, I think they're great sometimes for campaigns. It is August, and I am sick of it. I'm sick of it. I'm sorry I'm someone who will just choose candidates based on what I think in that cycle, and thus I have a mixed primary voting record, but I'm done with the texts, if possible.
I'm not going to out myself even more, Rachel, but you got to get the burner and then put that, when you donate to the candidates, you got to use the burner number.
This isn't even from donating, right? Like, I worked in politics until recently. I wasn't giving anyone cash, right? Like, they were paying me to do the work. I wish a burner would help me. I guess I need a burner when I register. I don't know. Maybe I'll try that.
There are a few apps that help to screen that, but it would deny us the great Sounds Terrible that you just provided us. Rachel's sick of it. We're all sick of it. We're sick of everything, but we also love it. And we'll be talking about it again next week. For Natalie, for Rachel, for Patrick, and producer Grace, this has been another edition of Can't Wait Sounds Terrible. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.